19, you read a book, Autobiography of Yogi.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And you said like something in you changed after that.
My parents were best friends with this couple, and their son was really good friends with me. And we went to graduate school together. And the father, my parents would make dinners with these couple, and they would party with them, and they were very festive. And I never knew this really about this guy, but he handed me this book when I was heading to graduate school, and we were driving from New York all the way down to Atlanta, so it was a long drive. So I read the whole book, and I had just been starting to do yoga. I was interested in it. I was doing martial arts at the time, something really very untraditional for a Westerner. I grew up playing very, very Western sports, and my exposure to yoga and some of the yogis that I had met bothered me because I didn't understand where they were coming from. And when I read Autobiography of Yogi, I was really upset. Like, it really changed, it shifted my paradigm quite a bit. And if I said, if this is the truth, if this is the absolute truth, how did this person do it? What were they teaching? What is this Kriya breath? Everything changed for me. Everything changed for me. My whole life changed. I started doing, I know this is crazy, but I did like 3 hours of yoga every morning at 4 a.m. Hatha yoga, and then finished with some very intense breathing. I don't think we missed a day, my roommate and I, for over 3 years. Like, we were out there at 4 a.m. every morning, and I was in search of this understanding. It's something that lit a fire in me, and the way I saw Western religion, and the questions that I was willing to ask, I sat my father down and I just said, look, if this is the truth, I'm just telling you, I can't do this, the way that we've been raised. And my father was super cool, and he said, well, if you want to investigate it, let me know what you find out, right? And it took me on this whole journey about, and one way, studying the mind and spirituality and yoga and hypnosis and what was common and human potential and what was possible. And I just went an unexpected route, a very unexpected route. I was very, those 4 years in graduate school, I was very to myself and really curious about, the nature of reality.
Which specific teaching from Autobiography of a Yogi you still carry today?
Of just the mystical, transcendental stuff, the Tiger Swami, his teacher, Babaji, and just the way that the way they appeared as mystics and saints and holy people, and what the message really was. And I was bothered by Paramahansa, by certain things.
What?
He didn't look like a yogi to me. It bothered me about it. And he didn't really do well in school. He didn't really get great grades, and I was just kind of bothered by that. And just things that, not to say that I just was naive at the time. I just had a way in my mind that I thought it was. And it took me full circle for me to really accept it. My God, my understanding is so limited, right? And it broke me down. And then I wound up reading a bunch of other really spiritual books that, opened my mind as well.
So if you got an opportunity in a hypothetical world to collaborate with one of these original ancient Indian gurus who follow this work, who would you collaborate with?
I'm probably Paramahansa, yeah.
Why?
Oh, I think he was just a really kind and generous and loving human. Yeah.
There's also your stuff, like your method, which is pulling mind out of your body, that's based out of Kundalini, right? Which is a very ancient Indian knowledge. So why don't you call it Kundalini and you give it some different name?
I discovered that when you name something based on tradition, I'm going to lose people in the audience. Or they're going to say, I learned Kundalini already. And they're going to have their own belief about it. So you'll never hear me say chakras. You never hear me say Kundalini. I try to stay away from words where people have a stigma or some unconscious belief. So I rename everything. But I stumbled across my own Kundalini experiences, not because I was trying in any way to have a Kundalini experience. I just, after years of yoga and just all of this kind of control, when I exerted myself and did certain things and I breathed a certain way, I would have a dramatic change in my body and in my brain. And I loved that feeling. I loved that feeling. It was that energy going right to my brain. And so the breath that we teach is just my best understanding of how to liberate that energy. All the energy you use to create a baby, to digest a meal, to run from a predator, those first three energy centers, instead of releasing the energy out, draw that energy back to the brain. And our brain scans show that on some level, it puts the brain into an altered state. Yeah.
So when you do all these researches on 5,000-year-old ancient Indian knowledge, and now you have a lot of science around it, and you have done a lot of researches, you've packaged it in a much more believable way for masses to understand, right? Do you think that your work and research now validate 5,000-year-old Indian wisdom?
I think it validates a lot of wisdom. All kinds of wisdom. I was invited to the Parliament for the World Religions, and had an opportunity to sit with a lot of really, really educated and adept religious leaders. And one of the things I learned in sitting at the table with very, very affluent people was that it was a language barrier. Like they were arguing over scriptures that were 5,000 years old. Who knows the word from 5,000, what it meant then, or 2,000 years old in another part of the world? Like the language was contemporary at the time. And, so I wanted to make it more approachable for people. And gosh, I've taken all kinds of courses, from Buddhism to the Vedic scriptures, all that stuff. It's a lot. It's a lot of, and it's, again, for a Westerner, it's very difficult for them to wrap their mind around some of the concepts. And I've even sat with them and had them try to help me understand differences. It's very tedious and it's very difficult. So for me, I thought, what would be the simplest thing to do is to find a way to understand it and then rename it in a way that everybody just goes, oh, okay, that makes sense, right? Do you have to know all the details? No, just this is the best name we can give. So I've always wanted to take very complex ideas or topics, whether it was spiritual or whether it was scientific, and make them really simple for people, really simple to make them, make it approachable for them to not be intimidated by it, but to understand it. And now we have so much science. The scientists can actually go way down the rabbit hole with all kinds of great, great understandings.
Because I'm from India, I can instantly connect a lot of your work with the Patanjali studies, the Advaita Vedanta, the Vedic scriptures, the Kundalini method, right? And there's a lot of information in our culture. What do you think? What do 5,000-year-old, when there was no science, like what do those people get it, which even today a lot of Western neuroscientists don't get?
There wasn't a lot of technology. Think about living just 300 years ago. It wasn't easy to be human and, live. And so I think certain cultures found ways to become more enlightened, you could even talk about Ayurvedic, right? So what do we have in our environment that's good for the body? What is the understanding? Why? In the West, meditation is such a bad thing, right? And in Buddhism or in traditional Indian culture, it's a way of life. It's like, this works, like, to get your brain and body better. This works to change who you are. So it was what they had that sustained the culture in the environments that they were in, and it became really very highly effective and very functional. It was a way of life, and it just happens to be ancient, more ancient than most religion and cultures.
Why do you think then it was always there in ancient cultures, right? Like in India out there, but I haven't heard of any Indian who was able to package it in a way to expand the blessings and the goodness of these teachings all around the world, or package it in a way which was digestible, which is helping people learn and heal better and overcome their old self and create a new reality. Like, Indians were not able to do it. Why did we? Like, you are able to do it in a much better way, in a much larger way. What do you think? Where did we lack?
I think there are a lot of Indians that were able to reach a lot of people when Indians came from India to the West, and they were on talk shows or being buried, and then they dig them up the next day, or put something through their neck out the other side. The West was mystified that, because there was only really one guy that was able to do anything like that, and this kind of opened people's minds quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a counterculture to kind of suppress that in a lot of ways, because it goes against a lot of agendas, right? So I do think it may have been a little bit before their time, but I do think they were important elements, important steps for people to understand where we are today. So I think they were, influenced a lot of people in a really important way, and they were strong seeds that bore a lot of fruit. But now technology is just so simple to be able to just get on something and see something that you didn't have available to you. You had to go to the top of a mountain in the Himalayas to find your way to some ancient school of ancient wisdom, and be willing to give up your life to learn some of these things. And I do think that there were a lot of people that made those journeys that we never saw again. Yeah. That said, I'm not coming back to society again, or there's many people that have transcended in some way. But I think this is really, this is a really important time to be alive. And I think it's important to be alive right now because, the human race is at a very critical point. We either implode or we evolve. And the coming of this new consciousness is not one person. Yeah. It's got to be a collective network of people. And, when you live in fear, or you're watching the news, or you're seeing all these tragedies, or you're exposed to different things, it really divides people. When you're in survival and when you're in stress, nobody wants to connect or trust. Everybody's got their own secular ways, and the best way to keep people divided is to keep them in survival and stress. And so, what an important time to be alive. I don't think it's ever been in my lifetime. I've never felt so much pressure, environmentally, with all the challenges that we've had. And this is a time where you cannot choose fear, where you can't choose aggression and hatred, because that would add to the consciousness to further divide, right? So something has to emerge that's greater than that. And it's not easy, especially when you're threatened in some way, or you don't have money, or, somebody's been injured in your family for some, unhealthy reason. So it's a huge challenge, right? It's a huge challenge, but this is the time, like, we chose to be here. And I do think, everybody has to play their part on some level, because my interest is if I'm working on myself and you're working on yourself and everybody's working on themselves to be a better person, right? Then there should be something really emergent that takes place, because the side effect of that is this kind of empathy that I think it's natural in human beings. I mean, I think we're wired to give, to care for one another, to inform, to heal, to connect, to invent, to support. I think we're wired to be